We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I join the Prime Minister in wishing everybody a happy St David's Day. Mr. Speaker, after 13 years of Tory failure, the average family in Britain will be poorer than the average family in Poland by 2030. That's a shocking state of affairs. If the Tories limp on in government, we're going to see a generation of young people learning to say Auf Wiedersehen pet in Polish, aren't we?
Mr. Speaker, it's clear to everyone that the biggest impact on households' living standards is the energy prices that we're suffering at the moment as a result of an illegal war in Ukraine. And I'll just remind the honourable gentleman what we are doing to ease people through that. Because of our energy price guarantee, right now the government is paying over half of a typical household energy bill, saving households right now £1,000. It is one of the most generous support schemes globally. Now, he knows future decisions to support cost of living are for the budget, but if he's concerned about the cost of living, what he should do is stop making inflationary, unfunded spending commitments and back our plan to halve inflation.
The dictionary definition for unfunded commitments is last year's kamikaze budget. Mr. Speaker, the only country in the G7 still poorer than it was before the pandemic, and he stands there pretending it's all fine. Total denial about the damage and decline that he is presiding over. Delivering growth and tackling the cost of living crisis will mean standing up to vested interests. Energy bills are going to go up by £900 in April. He knows he's going to have to act, but who's going to pay? Hard-working families through higher taxes and more borrowing, or the oil and gas giants celebrating record profits?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know the honourable gentleman. He made a rare trip out of North London to visit Davos. Recently. Perhaps while he was there, he missed the survey of 4,000 global CEOs from 100 different countries that ranked the United Kingdom as their #1 European investment destination. Now, if he's serious about getting the economy growing, then he should stand up to the vested interests in the unions and back our minimum service levels.
Mr. Speaker, here's the thing. All the CEOs of business saying there's only one party with a plan for growth, and it's this party here. And there's only one party that broke the economy, and they're sitting there. Now, on energy bills, it's not as complicated as he pretends. Oil and gas companies are making vast, unexpected profits, whilst working people face misery of higher bills. He can boast all he likes, but companies like Shell didn't pay a penny in windfall tax last year, and they're still not paying their fair share now. Why doesn't he admit his mistake, get rid of the loopholes in his botched windfall tax, and finally choose family finances over oil profits?
Mr. Speaker, there's a theme here. He seems to forget, as Chancellor, I introduced a new tax on energy companies. Energy companies will pay a 75% tax rate on extraordinary profits, comparable, indeed higher than other North Sea nations. Now, that's what his shadow levelling up secretary called for recently. But I've got good news for them. We did it a year ago. They've got to keep up. Now, I know, Mr. Speaker, they claim to support levelling up, but they really do need to keep up.
Keir Starmer.
He introduced a tax on Shell and they haven't paid a penny. Fantastic work. If he was serious about investing in the future of the country, he'd start with housing. A few months ago, his backbenchers forced him to scrap house-building targets. At the time, he stood there and said it would mean they would build more homes. Well, would you believe it? A few months later, the Home Builders Federation say house building is going to fall to its lowest level in 75 years. Now, he can change course on this. He can bring back targets and planning reforms, or he can duck that fight and let a generation down. Which is it?
Prime Minister.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, we've had recordly high numbers of house building and indeed the highest number of first-time buyers in around 20 years under this government. But he talks about investing for the long term of our country, and that's important when it comes to energy security, Mr. Speaker. But Labour's policy is to oppose any new oil and gas licences in the North Sea. It is an absurd policy that would see us paying billions to countries abroad for our energy while shipping it here with twice the carbon emissions. It's typical political posturing. It's bad for the economy. It's bad for our security, just like the Labour Party.
What? Because of the noise, I don't think the Prime Minister is hearing the questions, because I do think it was on house building. Keir Starmer.
On house building, Mr. Speaker, that's the lowest level for 75 years. A whole generation of people desperate to get on the housing ladder, 13 years in power, and all he's got to say to them is, it's somebody else's fault, let me deflect. No wonder they're furious with his government. And it's not just bills or housing. Families are paying over £1,000 a month just to send their child to nursery. If he scrapped his non-dom status, he could start to fund better childcare, put money back in people's pockets and get parents back to work. Seems a pretty simple choice to me. So what's he going to choose? Wealthy tax avoiders or hard-working parents?
Well, Mr. Speaker, if we want to see what happens with house building under a Labour government, just look what's going on in London, Mr. Speaker. And when it comes to tax, the facts don't suit his argument. Let's just go over them. The wealthiest pay more tax, the poorest pay less tax than under any year of the last Labour government, Mr. Speaker. Now, about his plans, he's already spent the money he claims he'd raised from that policy on 5 different things, Mr. Speaker. It's the same old Labour Party, always running out of other people's money.
Mr. Speaker, he's never happier than he's pretending everything's fine or blaming someone else. And didn't we just see it there? He is choosing tax avoiders over hard-working parents. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to finish this session without asking about the COVID disclosures in today's Daily Telegraph. Now, we don't know the truth of what happened yet. There are too many messages and too many unknowns. Oh, but families across the country will look at this, and the sight of politicians writing books, portraying themselves as heroes or selectively leaking messages will be insulting and ghoulish spectacle for them. At the heart of this is every family who made enormous sacrifices for the good of the country or who tragically lost loved ones. The country deserves better. The COVID inquiry has already cost the taxpayer £85 million and hasn't heard from a single government minister yet. So can the Prime Minister assure the House no more delays, that the inquiry will have whatever support it needs to report by the end of this year?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the last couple of years were an incredibly difficult time for everyone involved in the health service, and I pay tribute to all their hard work, and I know the House will join me in that regard. And now, rather than comment on piecemeal bits of information, I'm sure the honourable gentleman will agree with me the right way for these things to be looked at is the COVID inquiry. That's why we've established the COVID inquiry, and he will know, as he has mentioned it 1 or 2 times before that he was a lawyer in a previous life, that there is a proper process to these things. It is an independent inquiry. It has the resources it needs. It has the powers it needs. And what we should all do in this House is let them get on and do their job.